Going on, folks? It's me. I'm back. So I wanted to put this recording together because I've been watching the news lately, like I'm sure a lot of you guys have been as well, as it relates to Trump and this whole government shutdown that's going on. So it got me thinking about what's really going on in the Black community as it relates to the federal government here in the U.S. And I was actually looking at some stuff prior to this actually happening, and wanted to talk about the Congressional Black Talkers, or you may know them better as the Congressional Black Caucus. And the funny thing is, I was digging into what the CBC's been doing, what the federal government is doing, historically speaking, as it relates to just money and funds and foreign aid that's been going out. And the funny thing is that the U.S. government, how often the Democrats and the Republicans, which is two sides of the same coin, the same people, same party, they're just playing the black folks essentially. They've been providing reparations for over 50 to 60 years, right? We just didn't know it, or black folks haven't been paying enough attention to realize that. And so that brings me to the point of why the hell are we even voting for these Congressional Black Talkers or Congressional Black Caucus members? Why are we voting in the first place? What's the whole point of voting? We've been voting for the past 50 years consistently for the Democratic Party, or for that matter, for the Republican parties. As I said before, it's two sides of the same coin with their overall arching goal, the continuation of white supremacy, the status quo. And for those guys, the status quo is great because they can continue wielding power and controlling the narrative and controlling resources. And most definitely resources give you power, right? And so for us as black folks, I guess the question is, when is the day we're going to wake up and fully understand what's going on in the world, and that we have to be able to hold people accountable to do what they say they were going to do, or more importantly, make these people say that they're committed to the uplift of black people. Because if you notice, the election just happened, a month or 2 months ago, actually a month ago in November, a little over a month, leading up to a lot of these elections. If you go back and look at a lot of these politicians, specifically the black politicians, the CBC members, you notice they never say black, right? They'll always talk around it and say people of color, but people of color can mean anything. Who the hell is people of color? That's a non-descriptive term that's so broad, it can be so generalized and mean anything to anybody. And they do that on purpose. But you notice they never make any promises specifically to the black community because they have no intentions of doing anything for the black community. Those jokers are there for themselves, selfish as hell, only care about themselves and their own particular set of friends and family. And just to think about this, I don't know how those people can wake up and look at themselves every day in the mirror and not anguish or be ashamed of themselves, just thinking about their own ancestors, our ancestors, who fought and died just so that these jokers could be living the lives they live. And just think about it, our great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents were fighting and struggling so long to give us a better life. Yet you have these jokers here who take advantage of our community so that they can benefit personally for themselves and not even think about doing anything for our community and uplifting us as black people in general, which is a goddamn shame. But getting back to the crux of the matter here, the government's been providing reparations for a very long time with our tax dollars. The way I like to look at it is during the so-called Revolutionary War here in the U.S., they say it was fought over taxation without representation. That really wasn't what it was fought about. But I want to draw a direct line between that taxation without representation, because us, when I say us, I'm talking about black people here in America, we have been getting taxed without being represented for a very, very long time. And not a large enough group of us have realized that that's been the case. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, as I just outlined before, we have a bunch of jokers here in these Congressional Black Talkers in Congress, who many of them who live in their districts have not done anything for us as black people. And to further prove out my point, did some research, and all of you guys can go, take a look. A lot of these things out here, where as it relates to the U.S. foreign aid to Israel, some of the things that try to disguise, there's quite a few websites out there talk about it. And so when I'm saying these people are given reparations currently today, the Congress is, yet when Black people talk about how we need to be restored and repaired for the lost wages that we lost during slavery to bring us back to equilibrium, all of a sudden they don't have any money to do that. However, when you go back and you take a look through the last 50 to 60 years, really about 80 years, from about 1946 until today, the amount of money, and this is what we know of today, that you can actually document, there may even be more money than this, that the federal government, the U.S. government, you and I pay tax dollars to faithfully, because if we don't, they'll put our ass in jail, in prison. They have given $8 trillion in foreign aid to Israel. $8 trillion. You hear me? $8 trillion. $8 trillion. And so the country of Israel, you go back and look, back around 1946, that time frame, when they first started giving this foreign aid to Israel and the U.S. did, I mean, the population was like around 1 million or so. You can Google it. And today it's at around 8 million people. Think about that. That's $1 trillion for every million people in the country over the last 80 years or so. Think about that. But if you go back and you try to look and see what during that same time frame has been allocated to Black people, nothing specifically, really. I mean, if you go back, you have to go back to right after the Civil War, talk about the Freedmen's Bank, when you had things that were specifically outlined for Black folks. You have the 1964, 1965 Civil Rights Act, those types of things. But there weren't any actual specific large amounts of money allocated specifically for us as Black people and then just handed off to us. And then the question has to come to your mind, what the hell are these guys doing in Congress all the time? Why have we not been able to secure any tangible resources in this 60 to 70, 80 year period, this same time frame that Israel has been fleecing us of our tax dollars and our money and our reparations, right? The problem is these folks don't have a political backbone or any will to help the Black community. It's obvious. So I ask you again, what the hell are you voting for? Why are you voting for these people, whether it be Democrats or Republicans, but more specifically, it's congressional Black talkers that are there in Congress doing nothing for our people. Yet they want to turn around and try to shame you into voting every time there's an election, talking about, well, our ancestors fought and died for the right to vote. Who gives a shit? They fought and died for the right to vote because at that time, people were actually doing things that were benefiting the community when they went out and voted for them, and people were being held accountable. And at the time, Black people who were being put in office felt some type of link and duty and honor amongst themselves to do something for their people. Because if you think about that, especially like right after Reconstruction, that first 8 years, I know Ta-Nehisi Coates has like a book talking a lot about this, that first 8 years in power. We were really, really doing some really good things. And so if you look at after that first 8 years, after Reconstruction, and then right after that, that's when these white supremacists and Jim Crow, South and even up north, right, that really matter, they really started to try to make it hard for us to vote, because at that time, man, we were really all in. We were doing what we were saying we were going to do for our people. We understood that that group loyalty, that group cooperation, that group initiative all served us better to equal out, group economics, because having an economic foundation is the most important thing, regardless of your political leanings, because politics is really a function of economics. It shouldn't be the other way around. And see, that's the other thing we're getting confused on here as Black people within the U.S. is we're going to have to try to vote our way into power. Voting is not power. contrary to popular belief. It's not. The people who actually wield the power, you never see them on TV. They're the people who are paying the politicians and funding their campaigns. If you go back to what's currently happening today with Trump and this whole Russia so-called investigation with Mueller, the first thing they did is they followed the money trail. Whoever pays the piper is the one who gets to play the tune, right? Even if they're not physically playing the tune, they get to tell the person what tune to play because they're paying them. And so if you go back and follow this money trail, like we're talking about with Israel, those are the people who are really in power and really have the juice within the U.S. Think about this. You have a really a small part of the world here, 8 million people. And like I said, way back then, they had less than 1 million folks who are fleecing the U.S. Congress out of $3.3 billion a year. And they just renegotiated this MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, this year. And so, actually, I should say last year, it's 17/early 18, for $38 billion. And your so-called first black president, Barack Obama, was the one who signed off on this. And then there's other funds as well that they were securing outside of this MOU, right? There's another funding vehicle that the U.S. government is doing. They're securitizing loans for Israel. So they're backing their loans, loan guaranteeing them. So for example, in the early 2000s, 2002, 2003, 2004 timeframe, Israel was borrowing money from the U.S. off of this securitized loan program. And while I'm saying securitized, not physically securitized, but kind of is, because the U.S. government is backing the loans for up to a certain amount. So it started out like a lower amount, like $1 billion, and then it jumped all the way up to $3.8 billion. And they've been doing this for the past 15 years or so, even though Israel has not been drawing on that $3.8 billion the last 10 years or so. The funds and the ability for them to draw that money is still there. And so what that does is that increases their bond rating, because each country, just like you have a rating with your credit score, has a credit score rating called a bond rating. And with the U.S. government securitizing that much money for them, which is a good percentage of their overall national GDP, it helps them have a higher bond rating, so then they can get money from other places cheaper at a cheaper interest rate. So all this stuff is tied in. Think about this. If the U.S. government were to securitize $3.8 billion per year for African Americans here in the U.S., what would that do? So if you take that $3.8 billion, let's round up to $4 billion, right? And each business would get $100,000. That's 400,000 businesses that you can securitize loans for every year for African Americans in the States. What would that do to our economy? What would that do to our worldview? How would that change us here at home, and how we could promote ourselves and grow ourselves and become economically independent? Because that's really the overarching goal: become economically independent and become a nation of our own. Because you start to build out that economy, right? You can start building out these banks, or we've had black banks before. Start building out these banking institutions, which in the banking institutions undergird the entire community. And if you think about it, that's one of the main reasons why we've had so many problems over the last, really, since we've been in the U.S. But after that Reconstruction period, where we did some really phenomenal things, we had the Freedmen's Bank, who was undergirding and financing a lot of those things before it went under, mysteriously, so to speak. But if you have banks undergirding and financing a lot of these activities, man, you can grow a community, right? You grow a community, you become a state, become a nation state, right? So you can really grow who you are with a bank or some type of financial institution undergirding and loaning out money and keeping the money traveling within the community 7 to 8 times, right? Because today, if you look at the US, we spend over $1 trillion a year in consumption. And you got these fools out here, Black Enterprise and other places, talking about black power, black spending power. How the hell is consuming and giving away all your money power, right? That's like telling a girl, you know what, you need to give away all your goods in between your legs, and that's power. That's not power. That's foolishness, right? We all know that. Some people call that a whoring, right? So that's not a smart thing to do. We're the world's whore, or the U.S. whore. The black people are, because we consume. We give all our money away. without actually getting anything in return for the most part. Do you want to be a whore? No, you do not want to be a whore. You want to be someone who conserves it, manages your money appropriately, and then judiciously purchases items that will benefit you, not only individually, but you as a group and collectively, as we talked about. So these are the type of things that these congressional black talkers are aware of, right? Yet they come out to you and talk about vote, vote, vote. The reason why they want you to vote, vote, vote is to keep them in power so they can continue to pillage and rape the African American community blind. And when I'm talking about rape and pillage the community blind, I'm talking about the fact that they're getting these salaries. Like the average salary, I think, on a U.S. congressman is 170 grand, right? Plus, they also have the ability to invest money in the stock market in a way that most people cannot, because they can have insider information and not be illegal, right? So if you look at a lot of these congressmen, if you look at the time, especially if they spend a lot of time in Congress, most of them, they start off in Congress, just not wealthy, average middle class people. But then by the time, if they've been there for a long time, they end up becoming wealthy. Much of it because of the fact that they can invest in stocks and things like that using insider information. It's not illegal. And then also the connection that they gain via being within Congress. And so the thing is we have so many selfish people within within our community that we must purge out and not be afraid to purge them out. I don't know if you guys have seen the Haitian Revolution documentary that Brother Tariq put together, but it's really good. And one of the key things he talks about in that documentary is when the brothers were getting ready to start the Haitian Revolution, preparing for the Haitian Revolution, one of the key things, I think was it Dessalines or Bukun Duty or Dada did, the first thing they did is they went and they killed all the collaborators, all the coons, poisoned them, right? Because one of the key things you have, or problem you will have, we have today, is with these coons, man. They'll be the first one to go run tell Massa that the brothers out here in the field Negroes, are about to kill your ass and take over this plantation from this injustice of slavery that you're putting us under. And so that's what we have here. We have a lot of I shouldn't say field hands, we have a lot of coon niggas in the big house, and even some of them potentially out in the field Negroes who are coons as well. And I'm talking about this congressional black talkers, your Roots of the world, your Ebonies, your Jets, your Black Enterprise. And it's a shame about Ebony and Jet because they used to be stalwart organizations of the black community when the founder, John Johnson Sr., ran the organization. But you have a lot of these people that are currently there today. The first thing they'll do is they'll go run tell Massa, so to speak, Whitey, and you have these Kunettes who got them as Addy. They'll go run tell them, and you got these bed bucks, as Brother Tariq likes to call them, who will go run tell Massa as well what's going on. So that's one of the key things we need to do and understand. I'm not advocating we go out and kill these brothers and sisters, but we need to root these brothers and sisters out of the community who are coons, because they don't need to be involved in our business. We don't need them as we're trying to move forward and move ourselves back into glory and power, and up under the out of subjugation from these white folks, and not only white folks, but these Chinese, because you got to watch out for all these other races who are trying to subjugate black people. If you look at Africa, and we could have a whole 5-hour conversation about that. But that's one of the key things we must do, is root out these coons and collaborators, man, because they will be the downfall of us as we move forward into this new world order that we must create for ourselves. And that has to be one of the key things we do as we look to 2019 and beyond. But going back to this, man, these reparations, man, they are a key thing. I understand that a lot of brothers and sisters believe that there's no way in hell we'll get reparations. But one of the things we have to understand is power respects power. There's a famous quote that Frederick Douglass has regarding power. I can't remember exactly the whole thing, but essentially what I was saying, power respects power. And so one of the key things we need to do, right? I'm not saying we should focus specifically on reparations, but we must let these people know we're serious, man. And that we're serious about what we're trying to do and what we will do in our capabilities. These white folks know we can do anything, man. We've conquered the world before. We've ran the world globally before they were around, or even a twinkle in an eye of our thought from the black man. But we must coordinate internally so that we can have a better understanding of how we're going to move ourselves forward. And I don't think we need to have, one leader. Like a lot of us have been looking for this Messiah, right? Brother Malcolm was a bad brother, man. Yes, indeed he was. He was one of those brothers, one of those messiahs. They keep murdering our brothers. But we must all pick up that mantle and become leaders within our homes, within our communities, and lead the right way. And not be afraid, as I said before, call out these coons and collaborators, man. Because they're not going to help us as we move forward to exert ourselves and lift ourselves out of these shackles of mental slavery and subjugation into power, into controlling our communities once again. So that's all I have for tonight. But we'll jump back in it again on the next couple of days. Good chatting with y'all. Hope you guys understand what I wanted to communicate here tonight to you. Anything's possible. That's the other thing I want us to understand. Going back to the Haitian Revolution, I mean, who would have thought that a group of enslaved people at the time could have overthrown the so-called greatest army in the globe, Napoleon's army, the Spanish army. They even had help, I think, from England at the time, with no major weapons. But what they did have was that unwilling, dying spirit and belief and will that they knew that they were going to be free, and that they weren't going to let their children face that same fate of subjugation, slavery, and just a demonic appetite and desires and things, unspeakable things that this white enslaver had done to them and their forefathers before them. And so I think that's one of the key things we must understand and do as we move forward is think about our children. Are we willing to submit our children to these same things? I'm going to have an essay on this in the future. Are we going to be men or are we boys? I mean, that's a question. That's a question we need to think about and ponder that as black men. Are we men or boys? Think about that. Are we? Are you really a man or are you a boy? So what are we going to do? Are we going to continue to cower, bow our heads to another man just because he's a white man? Or are we willing to lift our heads and take control of this world in power at any and all costs? As Brother Malcolm said, that was the difference, I believe, in the strength and power of our brothers in Haiti. I know we like to say a lot of times they had that Ogun spirit in them, and I think what really that Ogun spirit means and is talking about is you have that spirit and that willingness to die at all costs for what you believe in, to provide that freedom and power, really that power that we don't have today, but provide that to our children, because we're not willing to pass that same subjugation and weakness and feeling of apathy down to our children that oftentimes a lot of us have today. that we're willing to provide our lives. Are you willing to provide your life so that your children has a better life? I know a lot of times we say that, but our ancestors in Haiti were really willing to do that. And that's why they prevailed. So, brothers and sisters, I think that's one of the key things we must do as we move forward into the new year. Think about that, especially as brothers. Are we men or boys? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to sacrifice, right? There's an old saying, what's the price? Sacrifice, right? Are you willing to sacrifice any and everything to win this war? Because that's really what it is. I know Brother Jason Black talks about it in his thrilling documentary, Race War. Brothers and sisters, we're in a war. We're in a race war. We're in a war. We always have been. And I'm not going to say we always will be, but we always have been. And what we must understand is we have to be willing to fight and win this war at all costs. Because if we don't, these people who are oppressing us today will continue to be oppressing us 150 years from now. And if somebody's hearing my voice 150 years from now, like, man, my ancestors were doing this 150 years ago. Why have we not had any progress? Why have we not defeated our oppressor? And I think a lot of that will boil back down to what I was just saying before. We don't have that will, that indomitable will to do so. We're not willing to lay our lives on the line. We're not really men if that's the case. And I go back to the question, are we men or boys? Brothers and sisters, what are you? Especially brothers. Are you men or boys? Sisters, I know who you are. I know what you are. I'm not saying sisters can't be warriors, but men were built with that war mentality and that war physicalness to them to protect you as a sister and to protect our children. And that's really what this is about, providing that legacy and that ability for our children to do better than us. Just because I know we all talk about it aspirationally, it's supposed to, we say supposed to, your children are supposed to do better than you did. There is nothing written in stone or guaranteed that your children are going to do better than you. Your children can quite possibly do worse than you did. But the question is, what are we going to do to secure that bag, as we like to say today, so that our kids do not have to live this same way? And when I'm talking about live the same way, I'm not talking about specifically monetarily, money-wise, living in a lap of luxury. Because as a Black person, you ain't never living in a lap of luxury. You're still living underneath that system of white supremacy, no matter where you go on the globe. You may be avoiding it for a specific time period, but the question is, are we willing to defeat this system of white supremacy? Or are we willing to live comfortably under the system of white supremacy, right? So that's the type of thing we have to think about as we continue to move forward on this journey of living and of being and of continuing to fight back against the system of white supremacy so that we can replace that system of white supremacy with a system that suits, most notably us as African people much better. But also we're going to treat these other folks well as well. We've never been those type of people that will, once we have power, do people just any kind of way, because we're God's first people, right? So anyways, brothers and sisters, I'm gonna let you go. I've been on here a little bit too long, but just to tighten it back up, bring it all the way back around. This federal government, and when I'm talking about federal government, the US government, they're already providing reparations. What are we gonna do about it? I'm not saying that's where we wanna go, but the hypocrisy of these folks is just stunning. $8 trillion over the last 70 years or so directly to Israel. But yet they don't have any money for us as Black people. That's nonsense. What are we going to do about that? Lastly, why are you out here voting for these folks for office? Why are you voting for these Democrats? Why are you voting for these Republicans? We need to create our own party, the Black Party, and only elect people to office who promise to do things specifically for Black people. And if they don't, we vote their ass right up out of office. We put somebody back in there who's going to do things specifically for Black people. Because until we do, we'll continue to get nothing. You know, I like to make this comparison. Black people in politics since 68, or even probably I'd say probably since 68 or so, 68 until today, it's kind of like Black folks, we've asked these folks to do things. We put them in office. We thought we had accomplished everything we wanted to accomplish back in 65 through about 68, Civil Rights Act, all that good stuff. We're living in houses next to white people. Oh, all this so-called social stuff. Oh, we're great. But we just rested on our laurels. It's like me cutting my yard tonight or today, right? Knowing I typically have to cut my grass every week. You know, I don't cut the grass, it's going to grow, 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 and grow. It's like Black folks, we cut the grass 50 years ago. We decided that, hey, we cut it, we good, it looks perfect. We don't need to do anything else to it. Not realizing that if you don't cut the grass, it can continue to grow. And at some point, it's going to overtake your house and yard, and it'll be a mess. And so what we've done is we cut that grass one time, and that was it. We were like, oh, I'm good. I don't have to do anything else to it. No more maintenance to my yard, which is nonsense, right? So we have to get back to that Black political party that is doing things for Black people. We must create one. We must not continue to be shills for the Democrats or the Republicans, for that matter. Anywho, let you guys go. You know, Black first, as Brother Jason Black would say. And my new thing is Black first, last, and always. Peace out.